Hello and welcome. I'm Imani Humphreys-Torres from the City School Student Media Team. I'm a sophomore at Western High School. And here I'm with Mr. Connolly, the Chief Academic Officer, and Ms. Lane, the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. Today we're talking about a new English language arts curriculum for the district. We're taking questions, so please leave them in the comments of this post. Welcome. What is this curriculum and why do we need it? Just to start off, generally speaking.
Sure. So you want to start, John?
I can.
Okay.
A curriculum is basically what we expect students to learn, to be able to know, to be able to do, as it relates at every grade level and every subject. And it's basically a high quality curriculum is going to set students up for success.
And I would say we need it because our original English language arts curriculum was developed 7 years ago when the Common Core was first identified. So we built that curriculum really to get us a bridge to get to those standards. It was never intended for us to keep for year after year. We've done revisions, collected feedback from folks, but it was time for us to also look at the national trends of what was happening around the work around the standards. And so in doing that, investigating that materials have been developed, according to the work and having national expertise around that work. So it was time for us to revisit. Plus, our scores haven't moved as much as we wanted them to for students and the opportunities to improve the learning that happens on a daily basis.
Yeah. So what would it look like in the classroom?
Sure. So in the classroom, it would really be, as Chief Conley said, the idea of what does the curriculum look like, what do students interact with each day, is also what are teachers planning for students. So it would be the opportunities of really engaging all of the reading and the writing standards as well as listening and speaking. So what kinds of texts are students reading? What kinds of tasks are they doing? How are they building their 21st century learning skills? So opportunities for students to collaborate together, to really plan and take ownership of their own learning. So really taking a stance around what they read, whether they're arguing a point or, conferring with what they read, but really taking in information and being a critical consumer and making decisions around that would be really what it looks like each and every day. And of course that changes across grade levels. So that would incorporate as well for our youngest learners really learning how to read, so how to decode and figure out words and then building that continuum across. One of the really intentional pieces that we've thought about is what does the curriculum look like from K through 12th grade, so that we've really done a lot of investigation from the student lens, as in, what are students engaging in and what does that learning look like in a coherent way across grade levels.
And I would like to add just that, let's be clear that teachers are the most important people in this process to ensure that students are really successful. So although we are going to be adopting a curriculum, we are also going to have to ensure that there are ongoing supports for teachers around pedagogy as well as culturally relevant teaching.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I understand that personally. So when you say English language arts, what do you mean? Is it just about the books we read or does it go beyond that point?
So it goes a little deeper beyond that. It is about the core text that students read. It's also about the options of text that students read. So independent libraries, opportunities for students to have choice in their own reading, but it also incorporates writing. And so what are responses that we're asking students to do, whether it's a narrative piece that we're just asking for a response, whether it's an argument that we're asking students to explore and cite evidence, and how do they communicate what they're thinking about, and then also speaking and listening. How do they come together so that students can share ideas with each other, but also be prepared to share ideas outside of their own classroom, outside of their community, to really be, coherent and owning their learning and being able to communicate that work forward. So it's really that mix of all of those pieces that come together to support a student to become the best communicator in both writing and reading that they can become.
Yeah. So what, other than the 7-year lack of change, what warranted a new curriculum?
So I think really the opportunity for us to spend time, we spent time with partners who were experts in this work around standards alignment, and they looked at our curriculum to really see, do we have that coherent build from K through 12? Yeah. There's a lot of current research around content knowledge and being able to understand science and social studies and how does that serve a reader and a writer. So really looking at that as a continuum to build, because we know that having that background knowledge really helps students build their own comprehension, as well as their vocabulary, the fluency in which they read, so that if a student comes to something that they have background knowledge around, they're much more apt to have the conversation with a colleague, or they're much more apt to have the opportunities to speak and listen in different ways. So looking at that has been something that we've really spent a great deal of time with. As Chief Conley said, it's been really important for us to hear from teachers in this process. So we also did a teacher survey to hear from teachers what's currently working in the curriculum, what has been a struggle point in that. We also engaged various stakeholders in different ways. So we had a couple of community events. We were part of our parent community advisory board to really talk to people about what do they see as strengths, whether they're a teacher, whether they're a parent, what do they see their student doing, or what are their hopes and dreams for their students, so that we could take that back to a review team to really look at the materials and see what not only matches standards alignment, but what really matches the need of here in Baltimore, both for our students, for our teachers, and for our school leaders.
Yeah. So, sorry. Did you
No, I was just going to add that those engagement series, I think, were really powerful in going into the schools and meeting with the leaders and meeting with the teachers and really trying to understand how they have been experiencing the curriculum over the past few years and what they feel like they need to be able to ensure their students are successful. So, and Janice talked about the review team and how that information, along with the curriculum audit that we just recently went through, how that information really helped determine the direction that we're going to be going.
Yeah. So when the review team was working on this, what did they decide should specifically go in the curriculum?
So there were a number of factors that we considered in doing this. Of course, one as the major driver would be standards alignment. So really thinking about the standards that have been identified, where are real opportunities for students to engage in that work. Also work around the cultural relevancy, what really fits here for Baltimore, as well as the larger world context of which we also need to cover and think about. Thought about a lot of the differentiated opportunities or materials and opportunities to meet in small groups. We have a very large growing English language learner population, so also thinking about materials that have the opportunity to accommodate students. And then really supports across all students. So thinking about students that may be in gifted and learning classrooms, or students that may have IEPs or specialized learning needs, really thinking about a comprehensive piece that supports that. An additional thing that we heard from our teaching community was really to have some coherence or alignment in the curriculum. So they didn't want to go to one program for word study and another program for writing and another program for reading. So really trying to look at pieces that talk to each other in that curriculum, and a number of other factors, things like the complex text within the reading, so really looking at what grade bands for students are appropriate, and also the rigor within that, because we heard loud and clear, especially from students, including yourself, the opportunity that you wanted to be challenged, and so that you didn't want something that was easy or that just seemed like it was a rote activity that you were going through, but to really stretch you as a thinker and a learner. So that was really important in that work as well. So I would say that team really has done an amazing job of engaging with experts. So we were actually able to bring in national experts around the work, people like Nell Duke, who does research around early learning and really pays attention to what happens from our youngest learners in pre-K through grades 1 and 2, and really thinking about what are systems and structures, up to folks like Lisa Delpit, who is really a renowned expert in cultural relevancy, and what does that mean, not only for the materials, but again, as Chief Conley said, really thinking about what are the teacher moves to support that implementation. Because the other piece we realize is we can't just give teachers curriculum and think that's a silver bullet. It's really creating these high quality materials as the center and the foundation for the work for both our students and our teachers. And then how do we create the systems and structures that allow teachers to collaborate together, to plan together, to get ready for that implementation. So there were a number of factors as an ongoing rotation that they looked at through all of the materials to really analyze the best match, and then we thought about the usability for the district, the usability. So, what is the best that matches what we're looking for currently and with the systems that we have in place.
Okay. Did you have anything that you wanted
I think that was such a thorough answer. I really don't. I think the thing that I had learned by when we were meeting and reviewing the information given to us by teachers in the feedback sessions, as well as through the curriculum audit, was just to ensure that our tasks allow students, the questions that we're asking about those core texts, really allow students to get at the demands of the standards. And then the other piece was just being really clear. Teachers were saying we wanted everything pretty much put together for us, and we didn't want to have to go to here or go to there to plan our day.
Well, perfectly goes into another question we had, which was, So for the last question before we go into the parent questions, will this be more relevant to students? A lot of students have been wondering this for a long time now. Whenever we bring up curriculum, we discuss this. Will it become more relevant to us, especially as we're starting to go into our college years?
Yeah, I think that that's how students engage in the different texts in the curriculum is really important. I think students have to be able to see like who I am, and when I look at these different texts, like do I see myself in here, and do I see the relevance into like the past and currently into the world that we live in today, and how valuable, I'm a part of a very valuable culture. There's huge values in the windows and mirrors that people always are talking about, and I think that allows us to have a high interest text that allows students to engage in a way that they will enjoy the learning.
Okay.
And I would just add that I think our task alignment to that is just as crucial, right? So what you're learning is important. Why? So how can you use that later was another piece of the feedback that we got. Was, you know, if I'm learning this material around writing, how is it preparing me for college? So how can I make sure that the research I'm doing is really, you know, aligned and rigorous enough for college? And so I think both of those pieces coming together to be prepared for that transition, whether it's transitioning from elementary to middle and then middle to high and then high to college, how do we make sure that that's relevant within that work as well?
So we're going to actually start going into the parent questions and community questions.
Great.
And so one user had said, how will city schools make sure families are just as important to student success with this new curriculum? You might have just answered it, but feel free to elaborate.
Sure. Okay. So I think that one of the pieces that is really critical in this is also collecting parent voice in the process. So we've, you know, there are 2 upcoming community sessions that I know we'll announce a little bit later today, but 2 sessions to actually come in and take the materials, unpack the materials, see what they look like, see what it would what the experience would look like for students, and be able to inform that work. I think the other thing is that we're being really thoughtful around how each school community engages families in this process. So what are some family literacy nights, some opportunities for families to come in and see what's happening in schools? And then another piece that the blueprint really highlights for us is students taking ownership of their own learning. So how do we showcase the amazing things that our students are doing and offer some of those opportunities across the district, you know, and have student-led opportunities that really show the way that they communicate so powerfully and the way that you all have taken on this learning in your daily life to really make it become your own. So for us, that's really important. There's also part of the review, and that was a good reminder of all of the things in the review. There's actually a parent component within that too. So we look at what tools and resources are available for parents. We talk about the professional development opportunities that are available for schools and communities to invite parents to as well. And that's just been something that has been at, you know, the forefront of our planning, and something that I think we really want people to come out to those sessions to really share their thoughts and ideas with us.
And just want to echo that the parent and community involvement in this is really important to us, and we heard feedback from earlier sessions that they may have been set up in a way to elicit more feedback from teachers. So we want to redesign this in a way that will make a lot of sense for parents and communities, and bringing in others that will allow parents to actually experience what their students will actually get.
This is great because there are Saturday sessions coming up on April 28th from 9 a.m. to noon, our Carver Vocational Technical High School, and Thursday, May 3rd from from 5 to 7:30 p.m. at Fort Worthington Elementary Middle School. So perfect chance to have your voice heard. So another question that we had was, please explain in layman's terms what it means for the curriculum to be culturally relevant and to be prepared to use teaching strategies that support it. Why would this be important and not adamant to curriculum that is chosen and how it's chosen?
Well, like we said earlier, I think it's really important that students will be able to experience a curriculum that they see how valuable that you know they are and their culture is within the history of our world. I also think it's really important when we think about culturally relevant teaching that we have extremely high expectation, and that our teachers are, you know, culturally competent, and how we put all those pieces together. And that's a challenge though, and it's very important that we provide teachers ongoing professional learning around that, and it's something that we've been taking very seriously. We've heard it over and over again in our community feedbacks, but it's something that we've built into our review team. I also just want to say, like, that is really important, but it's also really important. There's a balance here. There's a balance of this culturally relevant teaching and cultural competency, but also just there's like there's urgency around ensuring that our students have access to a curriculum that is standards aligned to our Maryland College and Career Readiness. So the review team and Janice's team is doing a really phenomenal job balancing how do we look at this curriculum from a culturally relevant point of view, but also ensuring that students are going to have access. It's their right to have access to a standards aligned curriculum.
That's right, and I would just add that it is a definite indicator of what we've been evaluating against, but we're not going to find a curriculum that's just about Baltimore, right? Nor would we want to just keep our students only in Baltimore history, as Chief Conley said, but really, how do we expand that beyond so that students have those opportunities to learn about themselves in the community and then think about their impact in the larger world? So really bringing that together as part of the work that we're doing. And then your point around would we want that, we absolutely are identifying that as an essential, but I think it's really important for folks to understand that one curriculum isn't going to solve every issue that every stakeholder group wants. So we also, it also talks about what are we doing in social studies that may enhance some of that work across. Really, again, going back to that comment I made earlier about the student experience. So what does it look like, for you as a 10th grader in your full continuum of the year? What are you exposed to, and how do those pieces fit and tie into cultural relevancy is also something that's interconnected around the work that we're doing.
And we're really excited to engage some different organizations around the Baltimore area to help us figure out and think about this ongoing learning that teachers need to experience to ensure that students have access to culturally relevant teaching.
Yeah. It's great that you guys are including every possible aspect when you're considering this new curriculum. So someone had asked, overall, when is the rollout? Should we start over the summer to get ready for a 2018-19 rollout, or is it going to be years from now?
So it is going to start next school year. So students will experience the curriculum next school year. The team has been reviewing, and our timeline is to take to, as you announced, we'll have the community feedback sessions. We'll also have a feedback session with our principals and some of our teacher groups. And then we will actually make a recommendation to the school board on May 22nd. Okay. And at that point, if the school board approves the curriculum recommendation, then we would be ordering materials and start training teachers in the summer. And teachers would have an opportunity to see the curriculum, prepare for the curriculum, as well as ongoing learning opportunities throughout the year. So, there is a sense of urgency around change. We've been doing, as I said, the curriculum 7 years old. Yeah. There are some opportunities, there are some gaps in the curriculum, and the longer that we wait, the bigger that gap grows. So we don't want to keep that moving. And then, based on the recommendations that we make, it may be a staged implementation where, potentially next year is K-8 and the following year is high school, or next year could be K-5 and then 6-8 and then 9-12. So we're looking at that within our review as well as within our budgeting means of what choices we make and how to roll that out. But yes, we're definitely looking for a minimum of K-5, K-8 starting new curriculum next school year.
And we would expect to get the dates out around summer learning for our teachers around the new curriculum probably by the end of this week.
Okay, so that's great that you guys are moving so quickly to implement this new plan, by the way. Will the curriculum be aligned with the assessments that many teachers are encouraged to use for their SLO, or will there be a new one coming in?
So that's a great question, and a question that we've been talking about quite a bit in the work that we're doing in this review. We really can't answer it fully yet because we don't know which material we're going to be partnering with, but that is an option. So our goal will be the best alignment that makes sense for teachers and for students. We also don't want to change everything that we're doing next year, so we'll be making decisions based around what the curriculum drives us to. What we want to make sure in the assessment platform is that we really have a comprehensive system that makes sure that we can get the indicators from all of our students. So the pieces we currently have around assessing Common Core standards, or whether we're assessing actual writing, or whether we're looking at something like an assessment that tells us early phonemic awareness skills. So we're really looking at continuing to keep that portfolio that is really balanced of what we're doing, but that may cause some shifts based in. And once we make that decision with the school board, that would
And this is a process
some of those.
that we go through every year of looking at our assessment, strategy and figuring out what are the best things, or what are the things that we can improve on, or what do we need, where are areas that we need to bolster up. And it's just, we're in the middle of this curriculum adoption now, so we need a little bit more information to see how those two pieces will align.
Yeah. So here's a question from a parent of an elementary school student. Will the new curriculum support instructions in fundamentals like phonics and handwriting? This seems to be lacking right now, so was one suggestion was.
Yes, absolutely. That's another favorite question that we get. And absolutely, the foundational skills are key and essential for students to learn how to read. So things like phonics, decoding words, phonemic awareness, fluency, to become a strong reader will be a central and a foundational piece of the curriculum. Handwriting is always one of those hot button topics that come into that, and that, yes, when we're looking at that, we're also looking at how is that embedded into the curriculum. Currently, we use a program for phonics called Foundations for our K-3 that does have handwriting embedded in that curriculum. So yes, that would be a focus point that we would want to continue.
Okay. And this is continuing with the same topic. Will there be a reading list for each grade available? Will the new curriculum be different for gifted and advanced learners?
So again, back to that earlier comment around supporting, we call that really our continuum of learners. So really making sure that our materials can address all the needs of every student. So whether it's a gifted and advanced learner, a student with specialized learning needs, one of our EL students or our English language learning students, we would want to make sure that we have curriculum that speaks to the scaffolding or the supports that each and every one of those students need. And yes, there are in each of the curriculum pieces that we're reviewing, there are what we would consider core or anchor texts that really are central to the learning. And then there are additional opportunities for students to do independent reading, choice reading that would come with book lists and recommendations based on topic. I think one thing that's really going to be different around the curriculum that people will feel is, you know, our current curriculum is really what you would consider module based. So that means it happens once a quarter. So you get like one theme idea that way. We're really looking at the content knowledge driving a lot of that work. So how does the content reading really support that for students both inside the classroom and outside of the classroom at home, after school opportunities, etc.
And I think that's something that we've learned in this process is we live this work every single day and talking about the modules, talking about the anchor text. But what we realized is that all of this information wasn't necessarily easily available for our communities, for our parents. And then thinking about, as a parent of a sixth grader, what do I want to know? I want to understand what he's expected to learn, and I want to know what he's reading. So we've been working with the teaching and learning team to ensure that each of the anchor texts for each of the modules is actually readily available for anyone who wants to review that.
Okay, that's great. For actually, these are some questions from some teachers that we received. So, is the curriculum being created by City Schools employer, or is it being purchased? This is from a special educator at a K-8 school.
Great question. So it is being developed by experts in the field. Many of those experts within the organization are teachers that are informing that work. They're not necessarily our teachers here in city schools, but they are definitely teachers. And what we will do is, you know, as we bring the curriculum in, there will be those opportunities that we will think about. Are there as I said earlier, there's not one answer for one program for everyone, but that may be an opportunity for us to bring in some of our teachers to really think about how do you bring the cultural relevancy piece, or maybe how do you do some scaffolding and opportunities for English language learners where we can really tap into the expertise in our own district. As well as Chief Conley said, you know, there are many community partners that we have who are interested in that work, so that we want to bring folks together at the table to have a voice and to really think about what is customizable in the curriculum that does fit Baltimore and Baltimore's needs.
Okay. That'd be really cool to see how like the inclusive and the implementation of it goes. So this is from another teacher. What professional development will be offered for the teachers? How drastically different will the schedule be from this year's?
Sure. So I think there are a couple of things we can highlight and talk through. One is summer opportunity. So really making sure that teachers who, you know, have exposure to the new curriculum not only see the curriculum, but actually have a chance to put their hands on it, plan for it, just get themselves prepared for what the year ahead looks like for them and for their students. So that will be something. Then we have our ongoing systemic professional development days where we bring teachers together. One of our goals in doing that work is really allowing teachers to learn from one another. We have amazing teachers in the district who are deeply committed to the work that they do every day for their students. So allowing them to take a leadership role in the work and partner together. And we're also currently working on a professional development strategy where teachers will get professional development during their collaborative planning. So as they are working in their schools during their regular collaborative planning time, it will be grounded in those high quality materials, and teachers will have the opportunity to collaborate with other teachers across the district. So, you know, I could be in a first grade classroom where I only have 2 first grade teachers, but now I have access to 15 first grade teachers across the district. So using some virtual opportunities for teachers to talk to one another, to plan together, and really rehearse and get ready for what they do with their students on a daily basis. So I would say that's the real enhancement to the work that we're doing. I think the second piece around that is keeping the materials central to all the learning that we do. So making sure that what we're doing is not around a strategy or something that seems isolated to a teacher, but something that's around what do they need to do within the next 2 weeks that they teach? How do they have time to prepare for that? And then how do they have time to collaborate around that didn't go so well? Maybe I need to adjust, or maybe we as a district need to provide another additional support for teachers or for students within that structure.
Yeah, and I think the teaching and learning team, working with our principal supervisors, our LEDs, have done a really good job these past couple of years providing professional learning to our principals and teachers around our 3-year academic goal and our cycles of professional learning, which is really about like quality instructional best practices out there in the field. But as we've been talking about in, moving towards a new curriculum in ELA, we want to make sure that our professional learning is really grounded and centered around the content or the curriculum and what's coming next for teachers. And as Janice was saying, how we help them plan more effectively to support the needs of all of their children. So making that shift from instructional practices to grounding it more into the upcoming curriculum.
And this is just a question that I had personally, but as someone who had to do National History Day projects for 3 years in a row, will these continue or the curriculum be changed to the point where we no longer have to participate in it?
National History Day?
Sure, absolutely. I think those are some of the greatest opportunities that our students engage in and really allow our students to shine and compete against other districts. And quite often we have students who outshine all districts. So that's a great opportunity for students to showcase their learning. And our goal will be, again, to create those opportunities for students that are real life. So, those skills that you use in something like National History Day, where you're reading and you're citing evidence and you're also critiquing, is this real? Or are there questions around it? And then how do you write and take a stance of what you think about that? And then how do you present, whether it's a project you're presenting or a presentation, are skills that we would want our students to have ongoing, and they will work across the content offices so that even if the ELA curriculum is changing, the social studies, the science teams, the math teams will be looking at what are those skills and strategies our students are using and what's the best way to showcase them in real world application. So my goal would be to continue those opportunities because I think it's a great asset for our students. And families. That's right.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. So this is from a teacher at a K through 8 school. Will the curriculum be all-inclusive or teachers have to supplement? If so, what resources will be available for them?
Sure. I think that is a question that we will define longer as we get into the process. So our goal is for all of the pieces to be there for teachers. We also never want to say to teachers, you can't think on your own. So we create the script and the curriculum creates the framework for what needs to happen. But teachers always know what's best for their students by how close they work with them on a daily basis. So we would also want them to have decision-making within the curriculum and with what they're doing. What the curriculum will create is a foundation, though, so that we can ensure no matter what school you're in the district, in 6th grade, you're covering X. And then there will always be pieces that teachers have the option to supplement or enhance. And our goal is to make sure that we have all the tools of high quality in front of our teachers and in front of our students. So we're really looking at supplying all of those pieces of the curriculum for teachers.
And we've heard it loud and clear that teachers are looking for a more all-inclusive instead of having to draw from various different places in their planning.
So this is, it's a great point too. A lot of feedback, especially was covering that point. So this is from a 6th and 7th grade teacher. Will there be enough books for each student to have a copy?
Another great question. Yes, our goal will be that we can get as many books as we can in hands of students. So when we built our own curriculum, we had different opportunities. So we had some core text. Students had copies of the core text, but small group, there weren't enough copies. So it is our goal to ensure that students have enough copies of text so that they can actually hold the text, read the text, mark up the text, and respond to text in ways that are really meaningful to them. So that is part of the review that we're doing.
And if teachers find themselves in a situation where they feel like they don't have what they need, they should definitely be reaching out to Janice's office or my office, and we should be problem solving on how to get teachers what they need to support the learning of students.
Definitely. So I'm glad the new curriculum will allow us to all have our own copies.
Yes.
And a little sharing has been a little tiresome. So from a special educator at K through 8 schools, what professional development will be offered for teachers? Sorry, that's the repetitive question. Will this affect the curriculum in social studies or other subjects, or just for ELA?
So we do curriculum review with the school board on a regular basis, and those curriculum review areas come up year in a cycle. Mm-hmm. So right now the curriculum review is, we did ELA last year, so right now we're looking at ongoing materials in other curriculum areas. So as we do that, that could impact the work that we do. Okay. Again, it could impact the scope and sequence time of what happens in those social studies classroom or the science classrooms. Mm-hmm. Or it could also trigger some collaboration between the English language arts teacher and the social studies teacher to do some of the pieces around things like National History Day and some of those opportunities to really create meaningful learning opportunities. So again, that relevancy question comes up, right? You're not reading this book for the sake of reading this book, but you're reading it to help you inform your learning, whether it's around content knowledge, whether it's around comprehension of what you're working through, or how those pieces come together to feed one another. Okay.
And we have some more Facebook Live questions now.
Great.
So one parent asked, will the new curriculum do a better job of supporting students with dyslexia?
So, were you going to jump or you?
I was just thinking the Continuum of Learners.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So again, looking at specialized learning needs, that we should definitely see curriculum that addresses those needs for students, whether, whatever the learning need is for that student. And then if, there's a certain piece that their curriculum is not enough, how do we partner with other organizations that have specialty programs or opportunities for students that may need additional dosage to support their learning?
And I would just add, I think one of the things that has been really important for the review team is thinking about how whatever curriculum is that we're looking at, we're reviewing, that we're looking to see how that information, that content is being scaffolded up to more, to our advanced, gifted and advanced learners, or down to a student who has a disability or has some other sort of learning, needs that we need to, meet in the classroom. So the scaffolding of information and content is really important to us in making this decision.
You guys are really making me excited for this new curriculum, by the way. I can look forward to it, hopefully. It'll be here when I'm still in school.
That's right. You can come back and tell us how it's going, whether we've done our job or not, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
So will the new curriculum have resources plus a time allocated for writing mechanics and grammar?
Absolutely. So again, just like we talked about the foundational skills that need to happen in the early grades, we also know that the grammar and mechanics piece of helping students create to really share their voice and to do it in a way that people can read, can communicate through, and can best address the needs that they'll have in those transition years that we talked through. That will be a central and foundational piece of the curriculum.
Okay. So this is from a grandparent of a high school student. Reading needs to be seen as fun and a way to learn anything that you want to learn. Will students be able to read things that match their personal interests, or will it stick to like a flat theme?
So the themes will be connected across. That will be those core anchor texts that we talked about, but we always look for student engagement and opportunities for voice in that work. So opportunities around independent reading when students are doing work around their own choice, their own interest, their own love that they want to spend time in. That will still be a part and a central piece of the curriculum. And then as well, giving students choice in what happens within that work is also something, so that there won't be just one way to display your learning or share what you've learned from that unit, but really multiple options for students to be able to take that on to create the engaging environment, right? So I think the part that we have to think about is the fun for teachers, the fun for students, and the accountability for that work in a good way, that we want to make sure that school is a place people want to be, and that learning is something that we're making an investment in, and that students want to come and participate in that work.
Yeah, and we've had conversations earlier in the year about supplemental texts, and I think teachers really do have to have some freedom to be able to identify texts that are going to engage their students, or going to be high interest for students, but at the same time get back and help support and even go deeper into our Maryland College and Career Readiness standards. So I think that, teaching and learning, we do a really good job of trying to put text out there for people, but we also want to make sure that we engage teachers as well and provide some professional leeway and to identify text as well.
Okay. And that another question that goes right into what you were discussing, which was, how will this new curriculum help prepare us for college readiness programs, or will it continue having college readiness programs?
You want to try?
Sure. I can start and then you can go.
Always.
That's
It's kind of been the flow so far.
That's right. So absolutely. I mean, the work that you need to do in college, being able to read, being able to decipher what's in what you read, but most importantly, taking that information and making it your own, right? So understanding what is true, what is not, what you can argue, what you can't, right? And bringing those pieces together, how you can cite evidence, how you can make decisions about taking a point of view and building on someone else's point of view, arguing someone's point of view, stating a claim, providing evidence for what you believe. Those are opportunities that we want to start at our various early grades and keep going all the way through, so that when you get to college, that it's not, oh my goodness, all I'm doing is reading a textbook and have to make my own stance, right? But really making sense of what does that whole process look like and how do you embrace that process as a learner. So part of the work that we will be doing is definitely around that alignment, and really, again, I keep saying it, but it's really important to think about how the work transitions, even in our earliest grades in pre-K, straight through grade 12, to make sure those experiences are covered and at a depth of a level of understanding, so that we're not just doing it, here's your first research paper and your last one, and now you're going off to college. But another piece we heard from teachers is, how do you cite resources? How do we teach students to create a bibliography of their own work and what they've done in the research? So I think those are pieces that we do. And in Chief Conley's office, we also have an executive director who works on college and career readiness. We partner with them very closely around those experiences. So what students can do around pieces like dual enrollment and opportunities to explore college options while they're still in school is also something that the curriculum talks to for each other. So even though it might be an English language arts curriculum or experience, what could that look like in the college trajectory across schools? So that's also another partnership piece.
I mean, to me, just the goal hasn't changed, right? Like, we're just trying to provide teachers with high quality materials to help them reach that goal of making sure that students are critically analyzing text, right? And creating that coherent evidence-based argument, let's just connect it back to our 3-year academic goal. So the goal hasn't changed. We just want to give teachers better materials, more aligned materials to the standards, but that we just want to improve what we're doing.
Okay. Oh, we have some more questions.
There we go. That's great.
So how is all this happening before the next year?
So it's actually been a work in progress. So it is not that we're just trying to do it this week and get finished. We have been engaged in this process. We launched the audit in,
I think, December?
December. And did our teacher survey information, started some of our feedback sessions at that point to really hear from families, community, students, teachers, what they wanted in the curriculum, and also do an expert evaluation with some people that have expertise in the work around standards alignment. So as all of that work was developing and happening, we also established a review team. And that review team has been coming together quite often, not just to review the materials, but actually to spend time learning deep knowledge around standards alignment. So spending time with some of those national experts that I highlighted. David Libin is a person who's done a ton of research around the content standards and how the background knowledge is so important in that literacy work. So our teacher teams and that panel has on it teachers, school leaders, and central office staff. Those folks have been spending quite a bit of time engaged with those experts to sharpen their own skills around the analysis of the review. And then there's a procurement process that happens here in city schools that really is defined around how often can we ask for materials, when do we get those materials to review. So we've been engaged in that process. The team will then make a recommendation to the leadership here at city schools around those ultimate 2 choices. Those 2 choices will be the materials that we're bringing the community together to get feedback again, bringing our teachers together, bringing students together, bringing principals together to really weigh in on between those materials. If they see a better match, what do they like about each of the materials? And then we as a leadership team will come back, take those considerations, the review considerations, and make a determination about the next curriculum. We've also been really fortunate to be engaged with a top-notch group called Ed Reports, and that group is really expert teachers who have come together to analyze materials across the nation. And they've really done a ranking system where they look at content knowledge, they look at text complexity, and they look at usability, and they really rank those materials based on those 3 factors and then fit to a district. So we've had ongoing partnership with them to really do this, not only just here in city schools, but to really do it with a national lens as well. So it may seem rushed to some people, but it's really been a thoughtful, intentional process that we're taking the time to not only make this decision in city schools here at North Avenue, but again, to hear from the community, to hear from our teachers, our families, et cetera.
And I would just add to that, because it has been a very thoughtful process. It's something that I'm really proud of Teaching and Learning and the work that they've been doing. But it's not going to stop once the board votes on this and once we start our summer learning around this. It's an ongoing process to provide professional learning for our teachers. The engagement of community, parents, and teachers is not going to stop. The analysis of data to track and monitor our progress and how this is working, the changes that we're going to need to implement to support our students and their teachers, that's not going to stop. So it might seem like there's a lot going on in a very short period of time, but this is really going to be an ongoing process. And again, the urgency to make sure that our students have access to, really what they deserve, a standards-aligned curriculum.
Yeah. And before we go on to the next question, I'd like to take this time to inform any newcomers that there is a Saturday session on April 28th from 9 a.m. to noon at Carver Vocational Technical High School. I would like to restate April 28th from 9 a.m. to noon at Carver Vocational Technical High School, and Thursday, May 3rd from 5 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. at Fort Worthington Elementary Middle School. So, on to the next question. Has the MSDE African American History Curriculum been used as a resource for the creation of this new curriculum?
And MSDE, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Has the MSDE African American History Curriculum been used as a resource for the creation of this new curriculum? It's a question for one of our viewers.
Sure. So I'll take the first crack, and then if you want to jump, we are not creating the curriculum. So as I shared earlier, we're looking at products that other experts have brought together in that work. So we have not created a curriculum to build something around, but I would say that the components within the curriculum are aligned to those features that we've identified. And again, that's specific to social studies, so the two can talk to each other, but that's not really the foundation of the ELA review, but considerations made around that, because many of those educative, we call them, features of curriculum that really talks about how does a teacher read the curriculum and learn about the curriculum as they're teaching it, are embedded within the review of what we've done. And then again, thinking through once the curriculum is announced and shared with all of the content owners. So the coordinator of social studies will then look at the curriculum and see how that talks to the work of what she's doing in her content area to, again, best support teachers, best support students.
Okay. Is there anything that
I was going to add kind of where Janice ended there. And as we, once decisions are made and as we learn more and we engage other community partners and organizations and how to have ongoing support for our teachers and, just information and knowledge that we want our students to understand, in and around themselves, but also the Baltimore community, we'll be open in engaging others and figuring out how best to do that.
Yeah. So earlier I had asked you guys about will it be socially relevant to students, will be able to relate to on a level outside of just school. Another viewer has asked, will the curriculum be culturally relevant to us?
Oh, absolutely. Earlier we talked about in the review team how they looked at and were learning themselves around when you look at a curriculum, how do you, analyze it for cultural relevancy? So that's something that Janice's team and the review team has really been focusing on as part of not just, making sure that the curriculum is standards aligned, but again, I think a big piece of this is going to be the work that we do with teachers after a decision is made and making those connections to make sure that teachers are well equipped to support the learning of all their students and understanding who's in front of them.
Okay. And I think bringing those teams together ongoing, as Chief Conley just highlighted, is also creating opportunities for larger feedback and engagement across the district. The review team has been, a smaller team. So this would be the opportunity of how do we bring more teachers around the table, partners around the table around that, to think about what does that look like for our students each and every day.
Okay. Well, that's great that you're going to have that incorporation to it. Another question going right into that. for elementary and middle school students, how will this get them ready for high school, and how will it help students like myself get ready for college?
Right. I think, again, just thinking about one of the things that we learned in our curriculum review of that 7-year curriculum we talked about earlier was that there were places that there were gaps or opportunities where something might have happened in the early grades and then it didn't get taught again until middle school, and then maybe not again until high school. So looking at the coherence of what happens across that learning span for K to 12, both in skills and strategy work that have to happen, but equally important, this content knowledge understanding. So how are we ensuring that our students have the background knowledge, the access that Chief Conley was talking about, and the development across that space and time, so that it becomes a cycle of learning, so that as students are engaging and practicing what they learn, that they actually get the opportunity to really try that on. So that, again, back to that relevancy around why am I doing it, that in the earliest grades as they're learning to read, then how do they use that as a tool to communicate and to share with others? And then what happens in the middle grades as that grows up with a more rigorous expectation. And then ultimately, I think it's really interesting for the work that's happening nationally, even to look at those college and career ready expectations and back map all the way down to kindergarten and pre-K, right? So we spend so much time walking in our schools and see schools where in pre-K classrooms they're talking about college choice. And I mean, you know, it's such a shift, but it's so important that as our students start talking and being exposed to what the expectations are, they're going to achieve those outcomes. So that's part of the ongoing work that we will continue to focus on and really transition to also hold ourselves accountable that the work that we're presenting and the curriculum and those high quality materials actually do prepare students. You know, we'll constantly look at the assessments that you brought up earlier. We'll also look at things like PARC. We'll continue to look at things like NAEP that do a national benchmark to really see where we're falling within that work, and then opportunities for us to continue to grow and develop teachers and students.
And that all that does is stress the importance of how our different departments are working together. So a lot of the work out of the College and Career Readiness Office, led by Dr. Pfeiffer, is thinking about a trajectory, like how do we make sure that our students are prepared for college? And you know, everyone knows that by the time a student gets to 9th grade, you know, it's late to really introduce that work. So her team is really thinking and working with Janice's team of how do we start having those conversations and exposing students to this rigorous, you know, curriculum and different activities for teachers as well as early as pre-K, kindergarten, and also working with their parents and their communities so they understand what questions to ask of their school and their school community to ensure that their children or their child is ready.
Definitely. Before we go into the last 2 questions from Facebook Live, I'd like to remind anyone who is still with us that there are Saturday sessions from April 28th from 9 a.m. to noon at Carver Vocational Technical High School, and Thursday, May 3rd from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Worthington Elementary Middle School. So the last, there are 2 more questions, but the first one is, will all schools be required to teach the curriculum, and are schools allowed to opt out?
You want to go first? I'll give you that one first, right?
I think it's really important that we have a standard across our school system with regards to what we're teaching, and I think that we really do need our schools to teach our curriculum, because I feel like that's the only way we're ever going to really understand. Like, we do a lot of looking at data, checking, you know, against the strategy that we've been implementing, and trying to understand what works and where we need to move. And if we do have people all over the place and people not adhering to the curriculum to some degree, and again, as we talked about earlier, teachers do have freedom to make choices based on who's in front of them and their needs, and they're professionals, and we need to treat them as such. But we do need our schools to at least look at the curriculum as like the foundation in which all students will, you know, they'll experience this.
And it's really the only bar that we can then judge, is it the right thing that we're doing? Because if everybody's doing something a little different, it's not helpful for us to be able to support and coach around that. And then I would just add that the only other option around that are the charter schools, of course, have choice around their curriculum.
But outside of that, public schools would have to. Okay.
Yeah. And all of our professional learning is really moving in the direction of grounding it into the curriculum. And so if schools or anyone is making decisions outside of that, it's going to make it more complicated or difficult for us to be able to support them.
Okay. And this is our last question. So will this have a pre-K level curriculum?
So that is an interesting question of development. So we currently have a pre-K curriculum, and part of the review is around some of that pre-K curriculum. The scope for this was really around K-12 because the curriculum for pre-K is so different than the other grade levels, because you want to think about the developmental appropriateness, students allowed to engage in play. And there are a couple of new curriculum pieces that are coming out. Many of the vendors and partners that we're working with do not have pre-K curriculum in that existence, so that will become part of the review, whether that launch will happen for next school year. MSDE is also developing a pre-K curriculum, so that's been part of the investigation around studying what they're doing and what the potential features are around that. So we can keep you posted on that for sure, and keep that as an update as we go through the work. And just the same, I mean, you know, it's really important that if they didn't get a question answered, that we'll come back in and take a look at all of the responses and make sure all questions are answered for folks within the context, although you've been doing an amazing job of keeping us on track with that. But if there were additional that people didn't get, we're happy to respond and provide that context.
And just please, parents, community members, please come out to those sessions that were referenced earlier, because we really want to hear your voice and want to make sure you have a voice in the work that we're doing here at City Schools.
Well, thank you, Mr. Connolly, Ms. Lane. If you do have any additional questions, as Mr. Connolly has stated, please post them in the comments and we'll do our best to get back to you. Please consider attending one of our upcoming workshops where you'll have a chance to ask questions about the curriculum, provide feedback, and rate the options City School is considering. They are Saturday, April 28th from 9 a.m. to noon at the Carver Vocational Technical High School, and Thursday, May 3rd from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Fort Worthington Elementary Middle School. I'm Imani Humphreys-Torres from the City School Student Media Team. See you soon. Bye.